fire, but you'll never be free. Hello there, everybody. How you doing? Man, it's Friday, and I hope that wherever you are, that you are in a good spot this day. And yeah, let's just all take a deep breath. Ready? Just kind of take in that relaxed feeling. Let the spirit just flow. And I just invoke favor upon us all. And may everyone have a fantastic hour, a sabbatical away from the twilight zone. How is everybody? So good to see all of you. Thank you, moderators. Hello, Susie Q. How are you? Regine, good to see you. Hillard, good to see you. Infinite Frequencies. Hello. Redwood Tree. Love it. B3, how are you doing? DuPage, Trading Post, how are you, my good friend? Joyce, are you serious? Bernadette, there's a song like you. And Susie Q, there's one like you. Big Al is in the room. Yes, Big Al, I got here a minute early. Well, actually, I was out in time. I had a great time of meditating today. Just fantastic. Let me just invoke favor. Yes, I am invoking favor, which literally means pulling favor down from a higher plane. And it rests upon all of us. We have that peace that surpasses all understanding. Yes, that's all I got to say. Nothing missing, nothing broken. So, hello, Julianne Payne. Good to see you. Thank you for all of your wonderful gifts, my dear. Sarah Hopkins, hello. So many great people in here. So, um, yeah, the craziness is really getting interesting. And folks, we just really got to keep our heads about us because it's going to get more intense. Just telling you. Um, Word is that the president of the United States most likely was in fact exposed. Hello, Sarah Hopkins. Hello. I think I said hello to you. Paul, good to see you. Bree, hello. Um, so, that's not good. We hope that that's not the case. It's just odd that how this so-called virus seems to be targeted to a certain age demographic. It's like, how'd that happen? And who would have thought that, you can't get these anywhere. The N95s, they're like gold right now. This is the other thing that's in real short supply. Um, you know, and, you know, sanitizer. But you can make your own sanitizer if you have some rubbing alcohol. Just check it out. I think there's actually a couple of videos out there that you can actually do this. So just get ready for it. Hello, Belanca. Good to see you, my dear. Robert, good to see you. Um, yeah, we just got to remain calm and get ready. I mean, here in the United States, I mean, it's going to run its course. And yeah, potentially could be another 45, maybe longer, 60 days, who knows. No toilet paper. There is all sorts of weirdness, Al. Isn't that the truth? I can't help but not think of Beavis and Butthead, Cornholio. You got any TP for my, that's, yeah, laughter, folks. It doeth the heart and the body as a good medicine. Learn to laugh. I got to tell you, I don't like that's why I don't like, looking into the future. I just don't believe the future is set, but there is some, I told everybody that China would most likely, because if you listen to the Steiger Perspective last night, this is biowarfare. It's It's exactly what it is. They're not calling it that because if they did, that would cause even more panic. But it's all the indications, folks. It's just go over there and listen to it over at artistfirst.com. Check it out. I could talk a little bit more, but one of the things I said that they would use as a potential weapon, because the United States is dependent on China for all of its antibiotics, 97%, close enough to 100 on any scale. And now today, China news media said, well, we'll hold all antibiotics under the trade war to the United States. Well, that's in essence basically declaring war because the casualty rate potentially. Think about it. Boom. Let's see. What's else going on? It's just what it is, folks. I think we have to be mature about this. I think we have to be reasonable, mature people. Discretion. I don't like it when I hear certain groups saying, well, this is judgment from God. Listen, if that's your God that murders human beings, really? I love what our book, ML said, why did you guys worship such an angry God? That's a great question. I don't. I got out of the racket, man. But any case, so yeah, folks, in coming together like this, where we can laugh, where we can learn. By the way, for those of you who may want this, I actually printed out what the master said that we should do. And it's amazing the meditation I'm having now. I mean, I love this. Before falling asleep, suggest to your consciousness, and isn't consciousness everything? I find myself more and more in meditation giving thanksgiving for my consciousness. Had this most delightful conversation with the all. And, this book, I've read it before, but it's triggering something this time, something deep and profound. But y'all really should get this. You don't have to have it. It's one page. It's going to be right by my bedside because I love this. My wife said, this is what makes people wizards, when you begin to understand these deeper truths. I now realize that there is within me a spiritual joy body, ever young. You ever talk to your body? Your body has a spirit. It may very well be the soul itself, but your body is a temple. You worship inside your temple. Why? You worship yourself, and that's the way you should be. Remember, the all is in all of us. We are in the all. I am in the all is in me. A spiritual joy body, ever young, ever beautiful. I have beautiful spiritual mind, eyes, nose, mouth, and skin, the body of the divine infant, which now tonight is perfect. Repeat this affirmation and meditated upon it quietly while falling asleep. And I did. And I did this morning. Upon rising in the morning, suggest to yourself aloud, dear Wayne, you handsome spirit, you, there is a divine alchemist within. Oh yeah, baby. I'm talking a divine alchemist. Yes. And I love this. By the spiritual power of these affirmations during the night, a transmutation takes place and the unfolding from within. The spirit that has saturated this spiritual body and spiritual temple. The inner alchemist has caused dead and worn out cells to fall and the gold of new skin to appear with perpetual health and loveliness. Truly divine love in demonstration is eternal youth. The divine alchemist is within my temple, constantly coining new and beautiful baby cells. The spirit of youth is within my temple, this human form divine, and all is well. Om Sante, Sante, Sante. Far out stuff, isn't it? So if you want that, it's kind of groovy stuff. I like it a lot. So let's move on with this. I love the story. The story is so, it takes you places. And so we found ourselves in the middle of chapter 6 to kind of bring everyone up to date. Remember, they come into the village where the temple that was built, that is alive. It heals itself. As they said, if the marble, the white marble, never needs to be cleaned. For India, that says a lot because it's, hot and humid over there. But that even when the marble sloughs off, you can literally watch it become perfect again. So anyway, this is Emil talking. If man would come to know the greater stranger himself, let him enter his own closet and shut the door. There he will find his most dangerous enemy, and there he will learn to master him. He will find his true self. There will he find his trusted friend, his wisest teacher, his safest advisor, himself. There will he find the altar upon which God is the underlying fire, the source of all goodness, all strength, all power, himself, herself, self. He will know that God is in the deepest part of the silence. He will find that within himself abides the Holy of Holies. He will feel and know that his every desire is in God's mind and is, therefore, God's desire. He will feel and know the closeness of the relationship of God and man, the Father and the Son, the mother and the daughter. He will realize that not only in consciousness has there been any separation of these which have seemed two, just as his spirit and his body have seemed to be two, but which in reality are one. God feels both heaven and earth. It was this great revelation that came to Jacob in the silence. He slept on the stone of materiality. In a great burst of divine illumination, he saw the outer is but the outpressing or expression of the image held within. Excuse me. So impressed was he by this that he called out, surely the law, not Lord, we can replace it with law. Surely the law is in this place, the earth or body, and I knew it not. This is none other but the house of God, and this is the gate to heaven. Man will realize, as Jacob did, that the real gate to heaven is through his own consciousness. I love this, folks, because someone wrote me an email and it was so true. She said, there's peace to these words. There's no ambiguity. I'm using that word myself in what it's expressing, because it's expressing something that we all have known, whether we're by ourselves or within a large group. There is still that consciousness, that awareness of something greater within us that we all see and feel. We all possess it. And it's that direct consciousness. That's why I give the all. I don't see it as God. There's something above God. But I give thanks for the fact of my consciousness. It's the greatest gift, in my opinion, that I have discovered on these 23,000 plus days on this earth, that I have found the greatest gift given to me is my consciousness, my body, and my emotions. Emotions are a gift. We spend a lifetime learning to master them. And he who masters his emotions is truly mastered his body. What a great state of consciousness. That's all I got to say. It is this ladder of consciousness revealed in a vision of Jacob, which each of us must climb before we can enter that silent, secret place of the Most High and find that we are in the very center of every created thing, one with all things visible and invisible, in and of the omnipresence. In Jacob's vision, he was shown the ladder reaching from earth to heaven. He saw the angels of God descending and ascending upon it. God's ideas descending from the Spirit to form and ascending again. It was the same revelation that came to Jesus when the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the wonderful law of the expression, whereby ideas conceived in the divine mind come forth into expression and manifest in form. So perfectly was this law of expression revealed to the master that at once he saw all form may be transformed or changed in form through a change of consciousness in regard to it. His first temptation was to change the form of stones that came that to that of bread to satisfy personal hunger. But with the revelation of this law of expression came the true understanding that stones, as well as all other visible forms, have come forth from the universal mind substance, God, and are in themselves true expressions of divine mind. And all things desired, not formed, are still in this universal mind substance, ready to be created or brought forth to fill every desire. Thus, the need for bread but showed that the substance with which to create bread or any other needed thing is at hand without limitation. And bread can be created from this substance just as well as stones can be created therefrom. Every good desire man has is God's desire. Therefore, there is an unlimited supply in the universal God substance all about us to fill every desire. All we need to do is to learn to use what God has already created for us. And this he wills to have us do, that we may be free from every limitation and thus be abundantly free. You know, the interesting thing about faith, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The other thing about faith, faith is that activation, calling those things that be not as though they are. These are universal truths. They show up in so many of the sacred writings of all different religions, all different ideologies, theologies, etc. Calling those things that be not as though they are. And those of you who are beginners at this, it becomes hard. I mean, because what you're going to ask yourself, well, I'm lying. How can I say that I am healed when I feel sick? You can see, because the evidence would say, well, me speaking something isn't going to change it. Yeah, it is. It will change it across the board. Anyway, I digress. When Jesus, and by the way, this is not a literal, this is a conscious state of consciousness, the Christ message. You know, if we could only get just the words of the master without all the other associated tarnishness to it. Remember, folks, Jesus was never a Christian. Anyway, when Jesus said, I am the door, he meant that the I am and each soul is the door through which the life, power, and substance of the great I am, which is God, comes forth into expression through the individual. This I am has but one mode of expression, and that is through idea, thought, word, and act. This I am God being, which is power, substance, intelligence, is given form by consciousness. And for this reason, the Master said, according to your faith be it unto you. All things are possible to them that believe. Powerful, powerful things. I'll give you a little insight to my psyche, my background. When I was heavily in Christianity, and I was in the Word of Faith movement, that's what it was called. Y'all know this. But I always found it interesting in the Gospel of John that between the 13th and 16th chapters, 5 different times, the Master says, he says, ask anything of me, and it will be given, granted. And it's so interesting that when you see what he was really saying, it's that it's in this state of consciousness where all things are possible. There's no limitation. Anyway, now we see that God is within the soul as power, substance, and intelligence, or in spiritual terms, wisdom, love, and truth, and is brought out into form or expression through consciousness. The consciousness which is in the infinite mind of God and in man is determined by the concept or belief that is held in mind. It is the belief in separation from spirit that has caused our forms to age and die. When we see that spirit is all, and that form is constantly being expressed from spirit, then shall we understand that that which is born of or brought out of spirit is spirit. Folks, the meditation today was in line with all of this. It's quite fascinating. We'll talk about it, but this is just wonderful stuff. The next great truth to be revealed through the consciousness is that each individual, being a concept of the divine mind, is held in that mind as a perfect idea. Not one of us has to conceive himself. We have been perfectly conceived and are always held in the perfect mind of God as perfect beings. By having this realization brought to our consciousness, we can contact the divine mind and so reconceive what God has already conceived for us. Did you get that? So we can reconceive what God has already conceived for us. This is what Jesus called being born again. It is the great gift the silence has to offer us. For by contacting the God mind, we can think with the God mind and know ourselves as we are in reality rather than as we have thought ourselves to be. We contact God mind through true thought, and so being forth a true expression. Whereas in the past, perhaps through untrue thought, we have brought forth an untrue expression. But whether the form be perfect or imperfect, the beings of the form is perfect God power, God substance, God intelligence. It is not the being of the form that we wish to change, but the form that the being has assumed. This is to be done through the renewing of the mind, or through the change from the imperfect to the perfect concept, from the thought of man to the thought of God. How important then to find God, to contact him, to be one with him, and to bring him forth into expression. How equally important is the silence or the stilling of the personal mind, that the God mind in all its splendor may illume the consciousness. When it does, then we shall understand how the Son, S-U-N, of righteousness, right use of nest, did you get that? Julianne Payne, I know you love that, shall rise with healing in his wings. The mind of God floods consciousness as sunshine floods a darkened room. The infusion of the universal mind into the personal mind is like the entrance of the vastness of the outside air into the impurity of that which has long been held in some closed compartment. It stands alone, supreme. And we realize that we are to build but one temple. The temple of the living God is the blending of the greater with the lesser, through which the lesser becomes one with the greater. The impurity was caused by the separation of the lesser from the greater. The purity is caused by their union, so that no longer is there a greater and a lesser, but just the one good, whole, pure air. Even so, must we know that God is one, and all things visible and invisible are one with him. It is separation from him that has caused sin, sickness, poverty, and death. It is union with him that causes one to become a whole being, or to become conscious of being whole. Wow, that's profound. It is union with him, with the source of all, that causes one to become a whole being. And being, by the way, is capitalized B for those who are listening, or to become conscious of being whole. I mean, there's just so many freaking golden nuggets in this. I mean, by the way, you don't want gold. I'll tell you what I learned today in a lesson. The reason why those of the material get hung up on substances like gold is that they don't understand the density of gold is what will weigh the soul down. You just don't want that. Anyway, the separation from unity is the descent of the angels on the ladder of consciousness. The return to unity is the ascent of the angels upon the ladder. The descent is good, for the unity then becomes expressed in diversity. But in diversity, there need be no concept of separation. That which is diversity has been misconceived from the personal or external viewpoint to be separation. The great work for each soul is to lift the personal viewpoint to such heights in consciousness that it becomes one with the whole. When all can meet with one accord in one place, that place in consciousness where it is understood that all things visible and invisible have their origin in the one God, then we stand upon the Mount of Transfiguration. At first, we see Jesus, and with him Moses and Elijah, or law and prophecy, and the Christ, the power within man to know God. And we think to build 3 temples, but the deeper meaning comes. We are given to realize the immortality of man and to know that divinity is never lost, that divine man is deathless, eternal. Then Moses, the law, Elijah, the prophecy, disappear, and the Christ stands alone, supreme, and we realize that we have to build but one temple, the temple of the living God within our very selves. Then the Holy Spirit fills the consciousness, and the sense of delusion of sin, sickness, poverty, and death become no more. This is the great purpose of the silence. The temple from which you may chip a piece, and the scar will be instantly healed, but typifies the temple of our body, of which Jesus spoke, the temple not made by hands, eternal in the heavens, which we are to bring forth here on earth. Wow. I'll tell you, this is like a dose of happy juice, you know? Happy juice can be whatever you want. Chapter 7. Thursday morning, the sun rose clear and beautiful, but instead of pushing on, as we had expected, we were told that we would wait where we were until the trails had dried and the rivers had receded so that we could proceed more comfortably. We were all fearful lest our provisions should be exhausted, and one of our party voiced this fear. ML, who had charge of the whole outfit, came to us and said, "You need not fear. Does not God take care of all his creatures, both great and small? And are we not his creatures? You will see that here I have a few kernels of corn or corn seed. I will plant them. By this act, I have definitively said that I want corn. I have formed my corn in my mind. I have fulfilled the law, and in due season, it will come forth. It is necessary for us to wait the long, arduous process that nature, in her slow growth and unfoldment, will take in order to grow corn. If so, we would be obliged to wait a long, hard time to obtain it. Why not use a higher or more perfect law given us by the Father to produce it? All that is required is to become quiet and visualize or idealize corn, and we have corn cured, ready for use. If you doubt it, you can gather it, grind it into meal, and then make it into bread. There before us was corn grown and cured, so that we did gather it and grind it, and afterwards made into bread. Think about that. Instantaneous. There are stories replete of prophets having this ability. We all have it. Then Emil went on to say, "This you have seen and believe, but why not use a more perfect law and bring forth a more perfect thing, or exactly what you want? Bread. You will see by using this more perfect, or as you would say, more subtle law, I am able to bring forth exactly what I need, bread." And as we stood there spellbound, a large loaf of bread was in his hands. Nor did the supply stop until there were 40 loaves upon the table before us, placed there apparently by Emil himself. He remarked, "You see, there is sufficient for all. If not sufficient, more can be supplied until there is enough and to spare." We all ate the bread and pronounced it good. One of the things I was taught, and I haven't mastered it, but I know the principle. There is no empty space. You have to realize there is no empty space. What I think is empty space between my hands is an illusion. What is between my space is the substance of all things, everything. It's the same for you. And a certain level, as you can tell, the masters know how to take the substance, the molecules. We're all atoms, and form exactly what they need. Emile continued. When Jesus at Galilee asked Philip, "Whence shall we buy bread?" he did this to try him, for within himself he knew full well there was no necessity to buy the bread needed to feed the assembled multitude, nor to secure it through the material market then in existence. He saw the opportunity to prove to his disciples the power of bread leavened or increased by the Spirit. How often man in the mortal concept thinks as did Philip. He was calculating, as human consciousness is calculating today, from the visible supply on hand, thinking he had only so much bread or so much supply or so much money with which to buy. Jesus recognized that the one in Christ consciousness knows no limitation. Then he, in Christ consciousness, looked to God as the source and creator of all and gave thanks for the power and substance right at hand to fill every want. Then he broke and distributed through his disciples to those in outer need until the need was supplied and there remained 12 baskets over. Jesus never depended on the oversupply of another to fill his needs, nor the need of another. But he taught that our supply is right at hand in the universal substance, where all supply exists, and all we need to do is to create it or bring it forth. Just so, when Elijah multiplied the widow's oil, he did not apply to someone having an overabundance of oil, for had he done this, the supply would have been limited. He contacted the universal, and the only limit to the supply was that all the vessels were filled. The supply could have flowed on until this day had there been vessels to receive it. This is not hypnotism. None of you feel that you are in any way under a hypnotic spell. Let me say that the only hypnotism is the self-hypnotism of believing that each and every one cannot do the perfect works of God and create the desired condition or thing. For this is not the need itself, the desire to create. Instead of unfolding and creating as God wills us to create, you fold up in your little shells and say, "I can't." And you are hypnotized yourselves into actually believing that you are separate entities apart from God. You simply fall short of your perfect creation or expression. You do not let God express perfectly through you as it is his desire to do. Did not Jesus, the great master, say, "The works that I do, you here on earth, you shall also do. Greater works than these shall you do"? Was it not Jesus's true mission here on earth to show that we, as sons of God, or man in his true estate, can create as perfectly and as harmoniously as God does? When Jesus commanded the blind man to bathe his eyes in the pool of Siloam, was not this intended to open the eyes of all? All were to see that Jesus was sent by the Father to show us that the Father intended us to create exactly as he creates. Or all are to do the perfect work as Jesus did by recognizing the Christ in himself and in all. I can go one step further. This loaf I had just received and held in my hand is consumed as though burned by fire. What happened? I misused the perfect law that brought forth my conception and consumed that which I brought forth because of my misuse, or not using rightly or righteously. The perfect law, which is an exact as music or mathematics or any other so-called natural law, if I persist in the misuse of the perfect law, it will consume not only that which I create, but would consume me, the creator. I just want to stop here, folks. This is what so often happens to the vast population. We are creators. Each of us are where we are at because of what we spoke yesterday. We have manifested the past into our present. The future is yet defined. But you can see most people misuse the perfect law. Folks, we all possess it. The book of Proverbs says that anger, bitterness, resentment, unforgiveness dries the bones, means arthritis, joint disease. It's from within that dries the marrow. It's profound if you can grasp it. Is the bread really destroyed? We will admit the form is changed, for in place of the loaf, we have a small amount of dust or ashes. Has it not in reality been returned to the universal substance from which it sprang? Is it not now in an unmanifested form, waiting to be brought again into manifestation? Is this not the way with all forms that go from our sight, either by fire or decay, or in another other way? Do they not return to the universal substance, God, from which they sprang? Is this not the meaning of what descends from heaven must ascend into heaven? A short time ago, you saw ice formed without any apparent cause, as you perhaps think of it. Let me say that is the same as creating the bread. I can use the law to obtain ice as well as bread, just as long as I use either as a benefit to mankind, or as long as I am working in living accord with the law, or expressing as God wishes all to express. It is good for all to make bread or ice or any other and all things desired. And all must press on to the stage at which they can do these things. Can you not see that by using the highest law, the absolute law of God, you may bring forth that which you need or conceive in mind as your highest idea, and thus please God more fully by manifesting more fully, knowing as Jesus did that we are perfect sons of God? Does not this suggest freedom from commercial bondage as well as all other bondage? As I see it, the commercial bondage will, in a few years, become the greatest bondage of all. If it goes on at the rate it is now progressing, it will dominate man, soul, and body, and it cannot do otherwise than consume itself and those that are interested in it. This was written, remember, 1892. There is no question but that the first inception of commercialism was on a high spiritual plane. But materialism was allowed to creep in until the very power used to create is the power that will consume. Just as the very power used to create will always consume if not used rightly. Is not the pressing of commercialism and limitations upon us crowding us on to see that we must come up over or overcome these conditions? Is not this done by simply realizing that we are to do the perfect works of God, to raise our consciousness to the Christ consciousness? Is not this what Jesus taught us here on earth? Does not his whole life exemplify this? My dear brothers, you do not see that in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God. At this time, everything to be formed later was an unmanifested form in the universal mind substance, or as expressed by some, in chaos. This word in the original was actuality. This word, chaos, is misinterpreted to mean a turbulent or warring state, instead of the deep spiritual state of actuality, always awaiting a definite, creative, spoken word through which it can spring forth into manifested form. Man, I love that. Chaos. Let's just stop here a second. We get this idea of absolute insanity. We've been taught wrong. That's the problem with the West. We've been taught wrong. We have all succumbed to exactly what Emil said about commercialism. It dominates now everything: the spirit, the soul, the body, the mind. But chaos is not turbulent or a warring state. Instead, it is of a deep spiritual state of actuality, always awaiting a definite, creative, spoken word through which it can spring forth into manifested form. There have been times in our recent past this was called witchcraft. Think about it. When God principle desired to bring forth the word out of universal mind substance, God was quiet and he contemplated. In other words, God saw in an ideal world. He held in mind that substance of which the world was to be formed, a sufficient time to lower its vibration. Then he spoke the word, and the world was formed. Or, as we might say, God visualized a mental pattern or mold into which could flow the substance needed to make the world, and it came forth a perfect form, built upon the pattern which was held in consciousness. Are y'all beginning to see that this is not a God of the Bible? This is not the God of the Quran. This is not a God of any religion. This is a consciousness, which in my definition is not God. It's above God, but God would be the term that we have been indoctrinated to use. And if this consciousness can create this, I contend that there are other consciousness linked to this consciousness that have created other realities, other planes. We know that if you look at the radiation map of the universe itself, it resembles a brain with synaptic pathways stretching hundreds of billions. They say 15 billion light years across, but I don't go for that. But anyway, we continue. All these things might have been thought of by God, infinite power. He might have wished during an indefinite time that there were formed and made visible. Had not the definite spoken word been put forth into the formless ether, nothing would have been created or brought forth into visible form. In order to establish invisible results, the thought and desires of even an infinite, omnipotent creator, and bring orderly forms out of actuality, it took the definite, positive, let there be. So must we take the definitive step. God is holding the ideal perfect world in mind in every detail, and it is bound to come forth as a heaven or perfect home where all his children, all his creatures, and all his creations may dwell in peace and harmony. This is the perfect world that God saw in the beginning, and the one he is thinking into existence right now. And the time of its manifestation lies in our acceptance of it. When we can come to that one place, and know that we are all one man, and know that we are all members of God's body, as much as one member of our body is a part of the whole body, then we are in and of God's kingdom, heaven here on earth now. To make this manifest, realize that there is nothing material in heaven. Wow. All is spiritual. Realize that heaven is a perfect state of consciousness, a perfect world here on earth now. And all we need to do is to accept it. It is here all about us, waiting for us to open the inner eye. Through that eye, our bodies shall be made light, in light which is neither of the sun nor moon, but of the Father. And the Father is right here in the very innermost part of our being. We must sufficiently realize that there is nothing material, that all is spiritual. Then we must think of that wonderful God-given spiritual world, which is right here now, if we can realize it. Do you not see that God created all in this way? Did not God first become quiet and it's amazing. He contemplated and to see the light. I can't believe that. And then he said, let there be light. And it was so. In the same way, he said, let there be a firmament. And it was so. And likewise with other creations, he held each form or ideal steadfast in consciousness. Then he spoke the word, and the ideal was brought forth. Just so with man. God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness and give him dominion over all. God, all good, created all things good, man the greatest and last, with full dominion over all. Then man saw only good, and all was good until man separated himself from God and saw duality, or two. Then he, by his thought, created two, one good and the other the opposite. For if there were two, there would be opposite, good and evil. Thus evil came through man's perfect power to express or bring forth that which he gazed upon. If man had not seen evil, evil would not have been given no power of expression. Only the good would have been expressed, and we would be as perfect as God sees us today. Would not heaven always have been on earth as God sees it, and as we must all see it to make it manifest? Jesus had a perfect right to say that he came from heaven. For did not all come from heaven, the great universal mind substance? Since man was created in the image and likeness of God, did not God give man the power to create exactly as he creates? And does not God expect man to use that power as freely as he uses it? And in exactly the same way, by first perceiving the need, then conceiving the good, the ideal with which to fill the mold that we hold in consciousness and which is to be filled from the universal mind substance, then sending forth the word that is filled, that it is so and it is good. Are you really seeing? This is amazing, because so much going on in my mind is these words come out. How we, if we could all just realize we're all creators. We've been given immense power, and I think that that power has been usurped by those who know that we possessed it. I contend this reality that we live in right now is not our reality, but we have been hijacked to be creating it. I digress. Jesus, when he was crucified, gave his flesh, the outer, what we see of the body, to prove that there is really a deeper or spiritual body. And it is the spiritual body that he manifested when he came forth from the tomb. This is the body of which he spoke when he said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will rise it up again." He did this to show us that we have the same spiritual body and that we can do all the works he did. There is no question that if Jesus had wished to do so, he could have saved himself. There is no doubt that he saw there was a great change taking place in his body. He also saw that those about him were not able to see that they also could bring forth the spiritual body as he was attempting to have them see. Well, that puts the whole crucifixion thing in a wholly different light, doesn't it? Not in actuality, physicality, but think about what's being said here. They still looked to the personal, and he saw that if he brought forth the spiritual body without some decided change, the people would not be able to discern between the material and the spiritual. So he adopted the way of the crucifixion to bring about the change. Truly, is not this the Christ in man, which the great master, Jesus, whom we all love and reverence, came to show? Did he not unfold his life here on earth and to show us the perfect way of God? Can we do other than love his perfect ideal way when we once see it? Whether it be planting seed, making bread, or doing the 1,000,001 things necessary to human existence? Are not these acts more lessons carrying us on to our unfoldment? Someday we are to realize that we are truly sons of God, not servants. That as sons, we can and do have all that the Father has, and that we can use it just as freely as our Father desires. And I see I'm running out of time, so we'll pick up there on Monday. Wow, this is some, whew. Okay, I don't know. There's not many here today, but that's fine. I mean, it doesn't need to be. Rather have a small, intimate crowd that really gets this. This is good stuff. And remember, it's not talking the Christianity. This is not what's being preached here. This is not what's being spoken about. He can only, as he said, I can only give you the example of what you are most familiar with. I mean, I'm sure Emil could have used the Hindu gods, but for Westerners, it makes no sense. We have no reference of that. And this is really what we're doing. We're literally changing the Western spirit. Thank you, David Barry. Because when we begin to realize each one of us individually, you know, I told you in my Astro travels, I was at a class where I saw this sphere of light. I'm beginning to get what was being taught to me. Who would have known that? Well, I would have known because I am God. God is the expression of me. I'm an expression of God. That's what's so interesting. And that if we can hold it, and the great, you can look at Franz's books, Hermetics, the whole Golden Dawn, these are the same principles that we associate with witchcraft, sorcery, etc. Why? Because they had to keep us in a duality mind. Folks, there is no good and there is no bad, only that which we create. The true consciousness doesn't see it and that separation. That's why when I see the word Father, to me, I don't spend time on it. I know it's metaphorically, and I can put any word in there. We have the ability to create. I don't know about y'all. There's only, 174 people watching. I don't know about y'all, but what an opportunity. You tie this in with what's going on with the Crystal Network, what Karen is doing and David and all the rest. And you begin to realize now what her vision and the vision of what this is bringing together. You start mixing this knowledge into that, and you start having something that will begin to change the whole world. Excuse me, let's see, you're well. All right, everyone, have yourself a great Saturday and Sunday. It's not the weekend, it's your strongest part, and it's the time that you could use to create anything you want. Don't get in fear. If you want these books, I encourage you to get them. I'll send them to you, and you can spend time reading this. You can create a complete bubble around your whole house. You can create a bubble that when you walk out into the molecules, that they do not attach to you. I mean, this is what it is. Hello, Nina the Mystic. Love you, dear. Sarah, thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. It really has. All right, folks, I will see you on Monday. Be good, love yourselves, and continue to dig deep inside. Meditate. Begin to create that which you want. Remember, if it benefits, I'll stop in here. I know I'm going way over, but let's say you need a house. If you get it there enough, you can literally manifest it within your mind, and it will manifest material. It's a law. All right. Ciao. Love you. Peace. Bye-bye.